Today I am feeling blue, except for the socks. Could be the weather, could be that I slept like garbage last night. I laid in bed forever. I could not sleep. Or it could be because I have a little bit of soreness in my groin that I hurt last season, I dealt with all the time. It's kind of frustrating because I thought I was over it. I've had 2 months-ish of recovery and a lot of rehab and rest, and I was like, oh man, I'm doing good. I haven't pushed it too much, although I am doing a lot more volume than normal. But I don't know. Whatever, we'll get over it. Today I'm doing a little different. Instead of showing you when we go out walking through a workout, I want to talk about the Paralympic Games. What is the Paralympics? And one of the most common things I hear is, how's the Special Olympics, or when do you go to the next Paralympic Games? And there's some confusion about, what's the difference between Special Olympics and Paralympics, as well as the difference between Paralympics and Paralympic Games and all that stuff. So I'll try to give a brief explanation of what those are. I'm going to try to explain this while I do my warm-up. Got the mini bands going. I've actually tried making this video like 5 times, and I realized that explaining what a Paralympics are and the difference between Paralympics and Paralympic Games and para-athletes and adaptive athletes and all that is really confusing. So I'm trying to figure the simplest way to explain it, which it really is a simple concept once you get it, but there's so many different terms thrown around and they all are similar but have a little bit of a difference. So here we go. We're going to try this one more time. Take 6. So the Paralympics are Paralympic sports, are sports for athletes with physical disabilities. Like myself, I have low vision / legal blindness. There are totally blind athletes. There are athletes with amputations. You're probably familiar with blade runners or athletes with running blades. There's also arm amputees. There are athletes with neurological problems or disabilities, and then wheelchair athletes who have different types of paralyzation or whatnot. So para sports or Paralympic sports are sports for athletes with physical disabilities, unlike Special Olympics, which are sports for athletes with intellectual or low brain function disorders and things like that. Now there's one exception, and that is in the Paralympics there is one classification for athletes with intellectual disabilities. It's the T20 class, and you kind of think of those athletes as the most elite Special Olympic athletes. So within the Paralympics there are different classifications, or classes is what they're called, and that is a way to distinguish between the disability types. And we compete against athletes with same or similar disabilities. So I am a T13, that is a low vision / legally blind athlete. T11 would be totally blind athletes. I mentioned the T20 class for the elite Special Olympics type athletes with intellectual disabilities. The T60s, those are athletes who have amputation of the legs. And I'm not going to get all the way into like the nitty gritty, but just know that each class number means a different disability type or a different type of functioning disability. So to recap, Paralympic sports are sports for athletes with physical disabilities, and each classification are the different types of disabilities, and we compete within that classification against similar or same disabilities as ourselves to see who's the best. It's an elite level competition, at least at the top. We are part of the Olympic and Paralympic Committee. That's why it's now the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee, or USOPC. Our stuff is funded through the same sponsors that sponsor Olympic athletes, like Toyota, Procter & Gamble, Visa, Airbnb. I'm probably missing some, but those are like the big ones that you can think of. Samsung is another one. Nike, obviously, at least in the track and field space. So those are Those are like how we're funded and at the elite level. Now there's obviously recreational Paralympic sport, which is amazing, and I hope that I can be involved. I have been involved in some camps and just helping kids get out and experience sport, which is super, super awesome. And I continue to do that as I have more time and as I start to wind down my specific competing. Now, to distinguish, there are the Paralympic sport, which I talked about, any event where Paralympians or para-athletes with physical disabilities are competing. That's the Paralympic sport. And then there are the Paralympic Games, which happen every 4 years in conjunction with the Olympic Games. So a lot of times I'll get asked of, when do you go to the Paralympics? And it's like, okay, technically the Paralympic Games are every 4 years, so they're coming up next year in 2024 in Paris, right? But what I think they're really asking is, when do I compete next? Which is whatever the next event is, right? So we have, in a month and a half, we have the Pan America Games, the competition amongst all the Americas, North, South, and Central America, and down in Santiago, Chile. And that is a Paralympic sport event called the Pan American Games. Then we have Para World Championships. That's also a Paralympic sport. And then we have smaller ones within the United States where we have Paralympic specific events. I just saw in the Prefontaine Classic, they had a Paralympic women's 100-meter race for amputees and blade runners. So I hope this is coming across clear, because I don't know if it is. Please ask your questions below. If you want me to clarify, I can do another video on this. But I just want to hopefully help people understand the difference between Paralympic sport and Paralympic Games, as well as Paralympics and Special Olympics, and how it all works.